Welcome to the $1 Million Blueprint with Karen Pudetti, where we can talk about the honest truth about either starting a business or growing your business to the $1 million mark. I will give you a roadmap that provides you with the ideal client or buyer, financial wisdom, marketing, branding, leadership, and so much more. Thank you for joining the $1 Million Blueprint. I hope you enjoy the episode. I knew at a very young age that I wanted to own my own business. I think it was around when I was 18, 19 years old. I went to college for accounting and finance, and after I graduated, I worked for some CPA firms, and then I moved to corporate accounting. And I kept trying to find the job that I was going to be, wow, I love this. And I couldn't find that. I was extremely unfulfilled with these jobs. And I kept going back to the fact that I really wanted to own my own business someday. I wanted to be my own boss. I wanted to have my own flexibility. And I definitely didn't want someone to be telling me what I can and couldn't do and when I had to have it done by. I wanted to make those decisions for myself. When I was getting married and we were talking about starting a family, I knew it was time for me to start looking and making some decisions based on my future and what I really wanted to do. My goal at this point of my life was make my own money and also have a flexible schedule. But I also knew when I had a child, I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom as well. So I went back and got some licenses, electrolysis, waxing, aesthetics. And I thought I could work out of my house and have a nanny come to my house to watch my child. But I would always be there. So if I had a cancellation, if anything went wrong, I always knew what was going on. And it seemed like the perfect scenario for me. So after my child was born, I found a nanny. We still to this day call her Nanny Sue. She's been part of my family for the last 24 years. So she was at the house and she was with my daughter every day. And not every day. I work part-time. I work Tuesdays and Thursdays and half-day Saturdays. And I quickly had a full book of clients, and I was making over $100,000 a year just working those 2.5 days. And I kept thinking, wow, I want to do so much more someday. So I remember thinking to myself, I want to save as much money as possible. And then came the time, after working out of my house for a few years, I think my youngest daughter was right around 3. I knew it was to a point where I needed to move on to the next step. First of all, I couldn't have all these people coming in and out of my house anymore. It became kind of crazy. Even though it was totally separated from my living areas, but I needed to move the business. So I dabbled with this bright idea of getting a partner. Even though I had this inclination in my back of my head that I would be a horrible partner. And basically, it was only because I wanted to do things my way and on my own. I did talk to a few people and talked about a partnership, and it wasn't sitting well with me. Then I figured, okay, if I want to be my own boss, what do I want to do? Do I want to buy an existing business, or do I want to buy something that's already established? So again, I decided I was going to read all these books and kind of come up with a game plan. And I did a huge analysis on what I should do. Should I buy an existing business? The benefits, doing the SWOT analysis, strengths, opportunities, and to decide what I should do. So I decided I ended up buying a small business, which happened to be a salon. And we did do our due diligence and go in and look at their books and go over everything. And we bought it. And it became very, very clear to me and my husband as well that the books weren't the actual books. So no lie, there were 2 sets of books. And the books that we audited were nothing compared to what we were in for. Thank goodness we bought an asset business and we didn't buy the liability. So if you're ever looking into buying a business, definitely make sure you know what you're buying and what you're responsible for, and what you're not buying and what you're not responsible for. So then it came to the point like, okay, now that this business is not doing well, it is definitely in the red. I need to come up with a game plan very quickly to turn it around. So within the next 4 months, we made some big decisions, changed a lot of ways things were happening. You know, the money coming in was not even coming close to covering their expenses. There was just, inventory was out of control. I mean, there was almost every aspect of business wasn't really being run properly. So fast forward to 4 months later, and we definitely were making a profit, thank God. And people could really see the difference of how the business was run prior to me and after me. And I know that's really when the people there were like, okay, we're buying into who you are, what you're doing, and what you're doing for us. So that was a great feeling, because at that point I knew we were all a team and on board together. And then, let me just back up and say, it sounds really simple, but there was a lot of work we had to do fairly quickly to get that to be in a profitable situation. So then the next few years, we grew substantially. The first year, we ended up making a profit of $250,000. And so then we were growing. And then the next step was, okay, we've outgrown this little space. We need to take on more space. And thank God at that time, there was a space available that just opened up next door. So we took on that space. So now we're taking on double the space, and we're now increasing the number of employees. So again, our bottom line is still increasing. So that was great. But again, my intention there was not to stop there. I always had this goal in the back of my head this was just a starting point. And so I kept saving as much money as possible. And I know a ton of business owners, like, you start making a profit and all of a sudden you want to buy stuff, you want to get a new car, maybe join a membership or a couple different memberships. And you start spending money kind of crazy. And this is where you really, really, really need to focus and say, what are my goals? What is my end game? Where do I want to end up? And so then I was like, okay, I definitely want to save as much money as possible. And my husband and I, we decided, I wanted to buy a building, and of course he was going to be part of that journey with me. And so we started looking for our building together, and we looked at several different properties. It did take us about 3 years. We did walk away from the same building actually a couple times. But thankfully, Jim had his realtor license and really knew what to look for. We had to bring other engineers to keep looking at different properties. We had to look at the property and say, is this something that's going to last us, or is this okay for now? But then if we even grow even bigger, will this be good for us? So there was a ton of stuff to put into it, besides the electrical, the roof, the electrical, the heating, the cooling systems. We need to make sure that all those were like up, and where were we spending our money? For example, the money for the building we bought, we did know right from the start, we knew we needed to put in a new heating, cooling system in, and that cost $150,000 just right out of the gate. So we really looked at what we wanted and kind of came up with a game plan, knew our numbers all the time. But it was crazy. We took some retirement money out, and we took a loan out at this point for the building. So we were all in, but we also were very secure in what we were doing, and we had the financial background, and we had the accounting to know how it was going to work. But it was a crazy time. So we ended up buying a 16,000 square foot building. We rented out 9 to us, our business, and that way we had more space to rent out to somebody else for other income coming in. One of the other things I did in my careers after getting all the business set up and running smoothly is I also became a consultant for salons and spas and small other businesses around the United States. I also wrote a book, Rags to Riches, How Beauty Icons Made It Big. And that was an exciting journey because everybody in that book is a huge icon. Whether it be the business, every aspect of business is in that book. And the book is broken up in 3 parts. It tells the huge icon. For instance, Damone Roberts, he's the icon for eyebrows. He is in the book, an amazing chapter. He talks about, Madonna doing her eyebrows, Oprah Winfrey, stories about there. I mean, he made us laughing hysterically and crying the next moment. The book tells their journeys. Then the next part, it gives you, where are you with your business? Is it a plan? Is it startup? Where are you? And then each chapter of the book is broken down. There's leadership, there's finance, there's marketing, branding, expanding, how to pay your bills, what are you doing financially, all sorts of things that are main keys to the business. And then it goes into giving you knowledge of, is it branding, how to do it, what should you be doing, what are the ways you can brand? And the third part of it is really giving you the how to do it. So one of the most important questions I think anybody in business needs to ask, and again, it doesn't matter what business you're in, is that you have to ask yourself why. What is your why? If you don't have a why, I see a lot of people that are just doing it because, it fell into their lap, they're doing it half-assed, but your why really tells about who you are, what you're about, why you're doing it. So for instance, my why is all about my daughters. I have 2 daughters, and I, as a mom, which I feel is the most important job in the world, is that I want to set a good example in all walks of my life for my kids. I want them to be confident, kind, strong. I want them to be the best version of them that they could possibly be. So my why is to show them, yes, I can come home and cook dinner, I can do laundry, I can clean the house, but I can also run a business. I can also travel to Texas and be consulting with a business there. I could also do a TED Talk. I could do whatever I set my mind to do. And that's what I want my girls to do in their lifetime. For instance, my youngest daughter was diagnosed with ADHD at a very young age. And my husband and I, neither of us have ADHD. So we didn't know much about it. We were really clueless about it. So I was like, okay, what are we going to do? So we had to educate ourselves about it. We had her diagnosed by the best ADHD doctor in the United States. We took her to the pediatrician and told them what we found, and they agreed. I was also ended up doing a TED Talk regarding ADHD. My youngest daughter and I some days talk about doing a podcast for kids, particularly her age, which now is 14, with ADHD. What she goes through on a daily basis, her struggles. So that might be the next thing to come. So one of the things I decided to do was I started a clothing line called Be a Badass. And that is really to have funds that go into foundation for kids who have ADHD, because many kids with ADHD don't go to traditional colleges. So they can't go to a bank and get a traditional loan to go to a 4-year or 2-year college. And I'd love to be able to someday be able to have a big enough foundation where kids can come to me, the foundation, and say, I'm going to vet tech, or I'm going into aesthetics, or whatever tool and die. And I would like a grant towards that kind of education or that kind of training. So that's another thing, about me again, me being a mom and wanting my kids to come first, but my true why in life. And yeah, my why is my girls. My motto to my girls is to dream big, swing big, live big. And I hope that you listening to me today, I've inspired you in one way or another to take your next step, or to really start working on that business that you keep talking about, or take it to the next level. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was the $1 Million Blueprint with me, Karen Pudetti, and we will see you next time.